Today we're going to get into the two questions that I am asked the most often. Between this YouTube channel and my Instagram, it is uncanny the amount of times people ask me about this or want to debate me to the moon about this. But for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of confusion around it, certainly a lot of disinformation around both of these topics, by the way. Rather than to confuse you more with my confusing, non-articulate ways, today we're going to take it from the two sources' mouths, like literally where the information was born out of. One of those resources is the 11th edition of the American Cinematographer Manual via the American Society of Cinematographers, otherwise known as the ASC, Hollywood Special Club for the most acclaimed, most celebrated directors of photography in all of the land of America. And usually each country has their own little Society of Cinematographers. Like, for instance, there is the BSC. The second one will be coming from the ARRI website, ARRI.com. And you can find this yourself. They hand this out in little pamphlets. It comes in the camera manuals. The first topic of the day, preventing damage to SDI outputs. This is a thing. This all started because of the bloody Komodo, but it really started with 12G SDI. Everyone blamed it on the Komodo, and maybe the Komodo had its own issues. I personally never had issues with my red Komodo. There was so much confusion around it because the Komodo was so popular. But the reality is that ARRI already had this information out available to their clients and people that used, their consumers. There's a very simple protocol for working with 12G SDI. So it's a thing that is more common with 12G SDI than it is with the Komodo. Now, since more cameras have come out, more prosumer cameras have come out with 12G SDI, there now has been kind of a broader range of it where I think more people nowadays accept that, like, oh yeah, it's not just a Komodo problem. Now they recognize it as a 12G SDI problem. Let's just look right here on ARRI.com. Problem description, okay? So we're going to check this out together because they talk about it, but down here is what's important. How to avoid this problem. How about this? I don't want to read this to you. How about you just pause this and you read it for yourself, okay? Because I don't want this to turn into a fucking Mr. Rogers episode. Okay, so not only that, but then are you guys aware of Mutiny.io? There's a company called Mutiny.io, and they made a lot of accessories for Red Digital Cinema. They make these stickers. You can literally buy these stickers or make your own, for crying out loud, and put them wherever you want. I mean, I have a very generic Brother P-Touch label maker. Even on my small HD, power first, SDI last, right? It's literally just something I printed out on my P-Touch and put on my small HD. I put it on all my monitors. It's also necessary for the camera, number one, because that's the source, right? The camera is the source. It's always power first. Everything must be on, and then you plug in your SDI. And when I say power on, I'm talking about power to not only the camera, but all of the accessories that are connected to that 12G SDI source, right? Because you got to remember, you're probably running multiple things through there, possibly. You know, for instance, what if you are running like a dual output out of your Teradek? It's the last one in and the first one out, right? And this is where people always recently have been asking me a lot of questions. Because they know I use the FX6, they know I use this wooden camera battery slide system because it has built-in fuse protection. It's one of the reasons I've always used the wooden camera battery slides. I had it on the Komodo, and then I had to buy a specific one for this FX6 because I want it for the surge protection. In case we do end up in a situation where a first AC is moving very quickly, or I'm moving very quickly, and we have ourselves a problem, maybe it'll get tripped through the wooden camera battery plate before it blows something, right? That's the whole point of having that. But then someone asked me, what happens when the battery dies? Because they know that I have a internal battery. That's another great reason that I've always used these wooden camera batteries. Look, not sponsored. This is a non-sponsored video. Another reasons why I use them is because you can do hot swap with the battery, right? So I guess the question was like, the power is just going to jump immediately to the camera battery so you could still blow your SDI. But no, you won't. You won't, because as soon as that battery dies, right, and I hand that off to someone, a first AC, right, and they take that battery, the first thing I do is pull the SDI cable. I pull the SDI cable before that new battery comes on. That's as simple as that. That is like memory muscle, right? You gotta incorporate that into your workflow. Inform others that are unaware of this workflow, because I work with a lot of ACs that are unaware of the proper protocol. Some of them have never even heard of the 12G SDI blowout, right? So it's always important to inform them. That's what you do. Your battery dies, you take it off, Well, in my situation, I'm usually waiting for someone to bring a new one, right? So during that time, I'm pulling the SDI. It's so simple. And you got to pull it from the camera, right? You got to pull it from the source. Bookmark these things. You can go to ARRI's website. I'll leave a link to that technical information below. Check out the stickers, or who cares? Make your own little stickers, right? You just got to get it into your workflow. Okay, the second topic is this. It's this thing about shooting at controversial ISOs when outdoors versus indoors. And I've tried to talk about this. This all started with my Komodo videos of explaining Red Code RAW, and it all stemmed from that. But even that, I used to talk about it on the Pocket 4K days, and I'm certainly not the first person to talk about this or make a video about this, and nobody else on YouTube is either, because it has been talked about in the ASC since the dawn of cameras, since the dawn of ASC. This is one of their most basic, oldest things, because this is a principle that has been applied to digital cinematography since the dawn of digital cinematography when operating at this level, what ASC calls exposure strategy. And this is out of their chapter, Criteria for Evaluating Digital Cinematography Cameras, just how they operate without thinking about it. Again, I'm going to put this on the screen for you so you can pause this. I'm not going to read it to you, right? You can read it for yourselves. Just simply pause the video. So that first paragraph seems pretty basic, right? They're basically just talking about the reality of, look, it's very easy to clip your highlights in digital. And, even though the shadows may be a little forgiving, it's very easy to lose that shadow detail as well, right? They're just basically explaining basic exposure that we should all know by now. But it's this second paragraph that's ultra important. And I love what the first sentence is right here. It might seem to be a contradictory exposure strategy, but if we rate the ISO of a camera higher for very bright scenes, a darker monitor output picture compels us to stop down or to add ND to protect highlights. And so this is what I was always saying about in my videos when I would say, it's a way of tricking your sensor, right? That's how I would put it. And I know maybe to some people that sounds childish or something, right? But basically that's what they're saying, right? You are basically now looking at a monitor output, and now you're exposing to the output of the monitor because of what you did to the ISO. Because notice at the end how they remind you that when photographing with RAW mode, the raw image data is unaffected. ISO rating is metadata and not baked into the recorded raw image. So they're just throwing that in there at the end to remind you, like, look, don't be too nervous about this stuff when the reality is it's raw anyways. This practice does work the best with raw, obviously. You could use this strategy at your own risk if you're not shooting in raw, and I certainly do. I use this strategy all the time when on the FX6 and when not exporting raw, when just recording to the internal codec that FX6 offers. Granted, it's the best one, right? I always choose the strongest, highest codec, but still it's not raw. So you can still apply this strategy even when not shooting in raw. And it does sound so backwards, right? When you're first starting to understand it and practice it, it seems very counterintuitive, certainly if you come from photography first. It's the opposite of the analog days is really what it is, but really all they're trying to do is by, let's say you go outside and you go, oh, well, instead of living at the native ISO, and photography mind might go, hey, I want to drop this down to 100, but just play around, jack it up to 1000. See what happens, right? Because now you're like, holy shit, everything obviously is way super bright. So now you're either going to be forced to stop down or reduce the light or add ND. But at the end of the day, it is just all metadata. All they're trying to do is preserve those highlights that are being clipped. And then on the back end, shooting at lower ISOs and low light, it does the same thing. It does the trickery on the monitor, right? So now you're looking at an even darker image and you go, well, fuck, I got to open up, meaning the T-stop. And if you're wide open already on your lens, then you gotta, maybe pump up a little bit more out of your light or get a little bit more crafty with it. We've all seen these dynamic range charts. This is for the FX6. The funny thing about this is they don't even show like the dual native side of this. There's nowhere to click or anything. But anyways, it doesn't matter because look, the point is if you understand how these charts work, most people would just live at this native ISO of 800. But notice, look down here at 200. Notice you get 2 extra stops in the shadows. Your ISO dropped 2 stops, but now you're gaining 2 stops of dynamic range. Versus the highlights. Look, when you jack it all the way up to 3200, you're losing a lot of stops in your shadows, but notice you've gained 2 stops in highlight. Where do you need the dynamic range, right? So you got to really understand about your project that you're shooting, the overall look of it, what you care about it, what matters more, the highlights, the shadows, or both. There was a reason why I used to always shoot on Tiffin's Ultracon filters in day exteriors. I've talked about this a lot, but we can talk about it again because I know not everybody sees the same videos. But Ultracon is an Emmy award-winning filter made by Tiffin. And basically, it was designed to be used in high ambient areas, basically day exteriors where there's a lot of light and you want to control that waveform. And you can literally watch your waveform change. I'll leave some links to some past filter videos that I've done here demonstrating this. You can literally watch the waveform go, choom. It's literally what it's designed to do. So you add that to, ND, you're really going to be set for shooting that outdoor scene. In my Red Digital Cinema days, I used to say a lot that this only really works in RAW, but I can say with confidence that for the past over a year now that I've been shooting exclusively on the Sony FX6, this exposure strategy definitely works even with a non-RAW codec. Maybe that's a testament to the FX6's codec, but you get a pretty damn near similar codec in something like the FX3 as well, right? So I'm sure it would work just the same in the FX3. And it probably would work, I don't know. I almost dared to say that this strategy would work on the little A7C2, what I'm filming with right now, but I don't know. I don't think I would trust it. I just don't think it holds the data levels that something like, well, I know that it doesn't. It can't shake a stick at the FX6 in terms of codec. So with that camera specifically, certainly when shooting in S-Log, it never pops out of 800, but that's that camera. So again, this is all coming out of the ASC's chapter, Criteria for Evaluating Digital Cinematography Cameras. You have to know your cameras, right? You have to evaluate the cameras that you're using more than just like, yeah, okay, I know where everything is, right? In terms of functions, right? I feel like most people just want to figure out what's the function buttons, what does what. Okay, I know this camera now. Well, how do I make it go super slow-mo? Okay, I know this camera now. I'm a pro at it. How do I balance it on this gimbal? I'm being obviously a little sarcastic, but the reality is it is kind of true. People don't really, do this nerdy shit and like read this crazy book. This looks like a Bible, but there is some shit in here that is old school wisdom, right? This is like pearls. I don't know if you ever seen The Scent of a Woman, Al Pacino's.
There's only 2 syllables in this whole wide world. What's here? Pussy. Ah! Are you listening to me, son? I'm giving you pearls here.
That's kind of what's going on. The ASC is handing you this shit and it's just available for the taking. Because all of this stuff, you don't have to buy the book if you don't want it all in a handy little quick guide, if you just wanted these tidbits of information kind of sprinkled out to you like little baby birds, which maybe you do, then you could just simply, subscribe to ASC. Again, not sponsored. I don't give a fuck what you do, but a lot of their shit you can get for free off of just their website and following their social media. They drop little gems like this all the time. In fact, their Instagram is how I found out about this exposure strategy way back in like 2018. And that's when I started talking about it. And I think I shared the original post. I don't know. It's a really old video. You'd have to go find it. This strategy is something, again, that I have been using since 2018. It works. And I know it's very counterintuitive. People talk about it all the time. Don't worry about it. Try it on your non-RAW camera. Let us know in the comments below how that exposure strategy is working out for you. If you've been using it on a camera that doesn't shoot in RAW like I've been doing with the FX6, it's been pretty awesome, right? Again, so I apologize if this has been like super basic for a lot of my audience, but you'd be surprised that how many people at a very, very high level, working level, don't really grasp these two concepts or don't give a fuck about them. And that's cool too. But I think the 12 GSDI is something that everyone should be giving a fuck about. Save the gear, unless it's a rental, then fuck. Who the fuck cares? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Treat your rentals very nice. That was a horrible joke. Treat your rentals very nice because those belong to somebody, okay? Rental houses, most of their gear belongs to a fellow cinematographer. So just remember that. Okay. Anyways, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.